He spoke a lot about jobs, creating jobs, because we think that the best response to the question of purchasing power, which has clearly become the most important concern for the French population, is creating more jobs for the French population and for all the French citizens. He also proposed some ways to improve the purchasing power of the people with jobs, like the possibility of having a tax-free bonus. I think that's one of the good way to improve this purchasing power of the people. And the other way is to protect the French population against the increase of prices on commodities and on energy. Because, of course, one of the major concerns for all the French citizens, and I would say for all European citizens, is how to face the increase of prices on gasoline, diesel, commodities. And the way we are decided to protect the population against this inflation on prices is one of the ways to protect the purchasing power of the French population.
One other key measure that he announced in the presentation of his manifesto just last week was reopening the pension reform and raising the pension age. We know that was controversial in his first mandate and he didn't push through because, of course, the pandemic hit the country. Is it risky for a candidate to bring this back on the table, given the social unrest that happened in the first part of Emmanuel Macron's mandate?
It's risky, but it is a necessity. It is a necessity if you want to improve the global prosperity of the French nation. We are all aware of the necessity to push back the retirement age from 62 to 65. That's the proposal of the candidate Emmanuel Macron. Because that's the best way of protecting our social model. That's the best way of giving the guarantee to all the French citizens that they will have access to a fair and efficient pension system. You know, the other possibilities would be to increase taxes on the population. And clearly we don't want to increase taxes on the French population. We want to reduce the level of taxation on the French population. The other way would be to reduce the level of pensions. That's also a solution that we clearly want to avoid. So if you want to avoid those two bad solutions, and if you want to reinforce and protect the French social system, you don't have any other choice but to push back the retirement age. So that's risky, but that's also the evidence that Emmanuel Macron is a courageous candidate, that he's aware of the necessity of changing things in the French model for the sake of protecting this model and protecting solidarity among the different generations.
One of the legacies of the first mandate of Emmanuel Macron is a record debt level, 115% of GDP. One of the opponents of Emmanuel Macron in this electoral race, Valérie Pécresse, said that Emmanuel Macron has burned the cash. What's the credibility then of Emmanuel Macron when it comes to economic issue, and how will he restore this balance? Because that surely damages the seriousness of the candidate when it comes to the economy.
I just want to ask one single question. Who is the French president that came back to the 3% and that put France out of the European procedure for excessive deficit? His name is Emmanuel Macron. In 2017 and 2018, before the COVID crisis, we took all the necessary decisions to come back to sound public finances. We took all the necessary decisions to go under the 3% of public deficit. And we took all the decisions to stabilize and reduce the French public debt, which proves that we are totally determined to come back to sound public finances at the right pace. And if you are looking at the program of Emmanuel Macron, there is some more public spending for hospital, for security, for the schools, but there are also economies and the idea of feeding growth for the sake of coming back to sound public finances. And Emmanuel Macron made very clear that we will stick to our commitments and we will stick to our schedule, our previous schedule, which is to come back under the 3% of public deficit by 2027 and to reduce the level of public debt by 2026. It was the promise that we made to the European countries, the promise that we made to the French population. We will stick to these commitments.